Upon arrival, the officer briefly searched the exterior of the home while waiting for the other squadrons to show. Before he was able to make a full circle of the property, he noticed a slight movement out of the corner of his eye, coming from inside of the house. Inching closer to the home, he peered through a kitchen window, where he located a vague image. Someone appeared to be hiding behind the counter. Locking eyes with the petrified little girl, the officer was overcome with a wave of horror at what was before him. The girl was lying on the floor, her entire body coated in blood, and a portion of her foot had been severed. Someone had maimed the vulnerable child. Breaking down the front door, the officer finally gained entry inside, where he found the little girl, shaking and paralyzed by fear. Horrifyingly, she was attempting to scream and yell. However, nothing was coming out. When she could finally speak, she quickly gave her name, Jamie. The officer immediately carried Jamie outside, where he asked if any other people were in the house. She responded by saying that only her mother was in the bedroom. However, in a heartbreaking plea, she begged him not to leave her side. The officer comforted the young girl, stating that he needed to search the residence for anyone who may be hurt, and promised that she was safe. Just outside, another officer made their way to the petrified Jamie, where they could see that not only had her foot been severed, but she had suffered multiple lacerations to her head, legs, arms, and torso. When asked how she received the injuries, she responded by saying, "Some guy had a knife and another one had a bat and he hit my mom." Horrified, the officer asked if Jamie had any idea of who the perpetrators were, and although she couldn't identify any of her attackers, she recalled that one had been bald. However, she also told the authorities. One of them said, "Get the jewelry." She then told the police that she survived by pretending that she was dead. Soon, additional help had arrived, and it was then that they discovered all of the appalling contents waiting within the home. Authorities were able to follow the blood-stained footprints across the hallway carpet that led all the way back to the master bedroom. What they found upon entry could only be described as a chamber of horror. Not a single member of law enforcement could fathom the massive amounts of blood that had encompassed almost every inch of the room. And then they found something even more disturbing. The officers could barely stomach the absolute atrocity that was before them. Lying on the blood-soaked bed was Jamie's mother, Kimberly, who had been savagely murdered. Severely wounded Jamie was immediately rushed to the hospital, but there was no telling whether she would survive. Following the sickening discovery, the authorities were left with a mountain of questions. Most importantly, they needed to uncover who had unleashed such an evil attack upon a mother and her child. In an attempt to establish the motive, they began to search the house, and they discovered that various items of jewelry had been taken. In addition, they found that the basement window had been broken into, with the screen laying neatly on the ground. Along with this, the air conditioning unit that had been placed in a window above the deck was missing, yet another potential entry point to the home. South of the residence, tire tracks could be seen along the dirt pathway, and foot imprints were located within the front yard. As word of the brutal attack spread, the tight-knit community was plagued with fear. But what became even more frightening was the haunting whispers making their way to Mount Vernon from the nearby town of Brookline, only 20 minutes away. Apparently, a resident had been visiting a friend's house on Sunday, October 4th, and was introduced to a pair of young men, also from Brookline. Initially, the gathering seemed to be a harmless occasion, but that would quickly take a dark and unexpected turn. Within a short amount of time, the new friends had divulged a sick and twisted secret. They claimed that they had just killed a mother and her child, while another set of friends watched. The other patrons sat in disbelief as they listened to what they thought had been a scare tactic from the two, or a cruel joke. But as you'll come to find out, the truth behind this harrowing case would only emerge after a series of horrific findings. It's possible that the high of committing the crime had worn off, so the assailants were attempting to relive the attack and experience that rush again by describing it to friends. They likely enjoyed the attention and shock from the others and were potentially confident that there was no evidence linking them to the crime, suggesting that they may have believed they were smarter than police. However, they weren't smart enough as authorities caught wind of the chilling rumors and were in a mad dash to track down the mysterious young men. They would turn out to be 19-year-old Christopher Gribble and 17-year-old Steven Spader. One day after the horrific crime, they were each brought in for questioning. It was rather odd that Christopher, of all people, had been asked to talk with the police, considering his background. A longtime Eagle Scout, Christopher was a proud member of the Mormon Church and was working towards his goal of becoming a missionary. He'd been homeschooled from an early age, where his parents worked tirelessly to instill the proper values. This had also coincided with Christopher's time in the Boy Scouts, where he'd given back to his community, supposedly building a shed for the Brookline transfer station, a drop-off site for waste and recyclables. Although things weren't always as picture-perfect as they seemed. It was no secret that Christopher had struggled with the social portion of his life, where making friends became an almost impossible task. The few that he did have recalled his awkward demeanor and tendency to ramble during conversation. On top of this, social cues were somewhat of a foreign concept to the Eagle Scout, making for a rather difficult childhood. Human beings have a fundamental need to connect with other people. When someone is unable to or has great difficulty forming even platonic relationships, this can be a red flag for a personality disorder. Nonetheless, he carried on with his aspirations of one day becoming a Marine and enrolled in the U.S. Army Cadet Corps Group in Nashua, New Hampshire. There, he won the Academic and Good Conduct Honors Award. Unfortunately, the excellent student would find himself failing out of the training course in 2008. It was around this time that Christopher's friends and family noticed an odd shift in his behavior, and you'll soon find out exactly why that is. The date is October 5th, 2009, only one day after Kimberly's body has been found. The detective reads Christopher his Miranda rights before jumping right into the much-anticipated interrogation. The following never-before-heard interviews have been analyzed by a qualified team, including a licensed attorney, a licensed clinical psychologist, a former licensed professional counselor, and a licensed professional counselor.
What time do you get up Saturday morning?
Probably 10 something.
Okay.
Me and Steve had planned to go around and look at some yard sales.
Okay.
The pair of friends had supposedly visited a couple of local yard sales, but were unable to find anything worth purchasing. Following the unsuccessful shopping spree, Christopher drove Steven back home. But this wouldn't be the last that they see of each other on this day.
As you get closer to Saturday evening now, you guys making plans? Saturday night, weekend night, you're gonna go do something?
We were gonna just all chill like at Walmart or something.
Mm-hmm. Who do you chill there with? Who you hang out with? You guys?
Me, Steve, Billy. Quinn's a friend of ours, but he couldn't get out that night.
Okay.
He tried and, he ended up having to stay home.
Okay. Is that what you guys actually end up doing?
Well, we went over to Walmart, but Billy, I guess, had stuff to do, so he didn't get there till later.
When the detective questions Christopher about whether that's actually what they did, Christopher avoids answering the question directly, which is a red flag for possible deception. He may be trying to buy some time to think about what he should say. In addition, he mentions two new people, 17-year-old Quinn Glover and 18-year-old William Marks, also known as Billy, who'd been part of a friend group with Christopher and Steven, although Billy and Christopher had only just met a week prior.
You and Steve went to Walmart, and then Billy met up with you at some point?
I think we did. I'm pretty sure it was this Saturday when we did.
Okay.
Christopher uses a selective memory statement of "I think," and then a qualifier of "pretty sure," which are additional red flags for possible deception. The event he's describing was only 2 days ago, so it's something he should remember and be certain about. He may realize that if he wants to play it off as though he has a bad memory, then he needs his memory to be poor on days that don't involve crime and murder. However, the detective will likely be able to confirm or deny Christopher's recount of events based on possible surveillance footage or eyewitness statements, which Christopher may be realizing now.
And this is sometime around midnight that you meet Billy?
Yeah,
How long were you guys there beforehand?
Well, we didn't stay completely at Walmart. To be honest, I didn't really put it to memory much.
Yeah.
I remember we were hanging out, but I don't remember doing much of anything.
Someone who's being deceptive is more likely to give evasive answers. They want to leave open the possibility to change their story if needed, such as if a detective presents evidence that they were actually somewhere different than they said. If a suspect gives a definite alibi with no room for alterations, then it'll be much more difficult to adjust the story later on. In addition, Christopher may feel like he needs to be cautious about what he says in case one of his friends gives a different account. Next, he states that they made their way to another friend's house, 19-year-old Autumn Savoy. At Autumn's, Christopher recalls that they watched the popular show Dexter, and he begins to describe his fascination with the series.
The basic principle, I think, is he's like addicted to like blood and stuff. He really likes blood because he kills people too because of that, which probably sounds really bad in a homicide investigation saying we're watching that, but being honest, like, we find it really entertaining because he works as a blood expert for the police department, and he goes out when he finds people that they either can't get evidence on or somebody who's done something really incredibly evil, generally murderers, oddly enough. And he goes out and he kills them in this ritualistic fashion, but it doesn't really like show him killing them or anything.
What comes off as somewhat creepy is Christopher's interest in the character and the fact that he's going into such detail about the show. It seems that he doesn't think this will make him look at all suspicious, even continuing to state that they watched several hours of the show before he and Steven slept in his car, which the detectives find to be rather odd.
How come you guys didn't sleep in the house?
There's only like 2 couches inside,
Yeah.
and so we just hung out in the car because it holds in heat pretty well.
The pair had supposedly left Autumn's place around 7 or 8 in the morning before Christopher drove Steven back to his house. They met again later that afternoon at 1:30 and visited more local yard sales. It turns out that they were in desperate need of money, and, just as their luck would have it, Christopher stated that they were able to purchase a decent amount of jewelry for only $20 from one sale in particular. Now, we will find out exactly what they did with the newfound merchandise, while getting to meet our additional suspect, Steven. The detective asks similar questions to that of Christopher's interrogation, where Steven gives the same story.
I just went downstairs and discovered that someone at the mall, you and somebody else went down there and pawned some jewelry. Is that right?
I didn't. My friend did. Kristen.
Chris did. You were with Chris and you guys went there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody recognizes you as being there.
Okay, I was there.
Okay.
We went down to go pawn some stuff at the jewelry. I don't know why that's illegal.
No, it's not.
No.
Part of what we've done. We're trying to create a timeline of where you were.
Oh,
We can talk. You told us. You know, what was it? 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. You said you were at Walmart on 101A and Amherst. But we're gonna go back. We're gonna check that. Okay. He says he was here. He was there. Okay.
When a suspect acts defensive, such as Steven is doing here, this can be a red flag for deception, but his age may be a factor in his behavior. The logical part of the brain, known as the prefrontal cortex, isn't fully developed until around the age of 25, and even a few years later for men, which can partially explain why teenagers and children tend to act based on their emotions rather than thinking things through. It's also possible that Steven sees the interview as a big inconvenience for him.
Well, what did Chris pawn?
Let me see. He had some new gold necklaces. I didn't really look at it. He told me it was worth money, and he needed money for weed.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you.
Okay. How many necklaces do you remember?
We had like two or three. Like $130 worth of gold.
Christopher and Steven had only recently become friends again, after previously meeting during their time in the Boy Scouts. Years later, they would somehow reconnect, bonding over the same interests, and Steven, just like his friend, had grown up with issues of his own. As Steven's mother was allegedly struggling with addiction during her pregnancy, Steven tested positive for illegal substances upon his birth, but would go on to beat the odds and was adopted by a loving family at only 5 days old. During his childhood years, Steven was a picture of happiness, outgoing and personable, given every opportunity in life. He participated in various sports and joined both the Boy Scouts and a theater group. all of which gave him the chance to make friends. But once he approached his teenage years, it was like a switch had gone off. In an instant, the once lovable boy turned cold and became uncontrollable. This would later be confirmed through one of his close friends, Autumn, who had much to say about the troubled young man.
I just knew Steve was getting worse from talking to him. And then at some point, he went away. I don't know exactly where. When he came back, he was not the same person. He wasn't that emo kid who had issues at home. He was this kid who wanted to be a gangster, a big drug dealer. Like, it was odd because somehow he always managed to have money for drugs. He would sneak out at night. He'd quote-unquote borrow his parents' cars. Like, we'd hang out a lot. He was someone I could talk to. It was nice to have someone else who understood.
His mood swings could happen in the blink of an eye, leaving his friends and family to walk on eggshells. But even worse, Stephen was developing violent tendencies. His mother, Christine Spader, noted that at one point, Stephen had punched a wall out of sheer frustration. During a most memorable incident, Stephen and his father were having a heated argument, and the teenager, engulfed in rage, allegedly pulled out a knife. He started to associate with kids from different high schools, where he apparently joined a gang known as the Crips, although his father, also named Stephen, believed this to be nothing but teenage nonsense. In addition, he would take recreational and prescription drugs in order to help with his supposed anxiety. Stephen's parents grew increasingly worried about their rebellious teen and finally took him to see a psychiatrist in 2006. Stephen's behavior indicates that he was showing signs of having conduct disorder. Sometimes when behavioral problems are sudden and severe, like in Stephen's case, it occurs due to some sort of trauma or major stressor in the young person's life. And because Stephen was heading down such a dangerous path, his parents reportedly spent thousands of dollars in an attempt to help their son. However, he was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder and major depression. They would apparently go so far as to enroll him in an addiction treatment center, but were devastated to learn that he required a higher level of treatment than the facility could offer. Stephen was then taken to a residential treatment center, but left within a month, yet another failed resource. He even spent a few short days in psychiatric hospitals in 2008, and supposedly ran away with his girlfriend later that year, but was found in New York and returned home within days. It seemed that there was nothing left to try, but the devoted parents would never give up on their child, although not a single thing could have prevented the heinous acts of the monster that was about to be unleashed.
Back to early Sunday morning. There's no way that it could have been in Mount Vernon, like it's not that Chris and Billy? No. All right, well, I got some more information when I was downstairs. Yeah. Billy is basically giving it up.
This may be an example of the prisoner's dilemma, in which Stephen now faces the decision of whether to confess or to stick with his story. If Billy says nothing and Stephen says nothing, it's possible that there is not enough evidence to tie them to the crime, and they'll face no punishment. However, if Billy has talked and implicated Stephen, it's possible that Stephen could face a harsher punishment if he doesn't give his side of the story. But if Stephen confesses his role and Billy has admitted his part as well, they will likely both be punished. The prisoner's dilemma is such an effective tactic because Stephen is separated from the others. He doesn't know what they're saying or if they've cracked under the pressure. If he knew for sure the others weren't talking, he would feel more confident in keeping his original story. But the seeds of doubt are likely gnawing at him now, leaving him panicking about what to do.
I'd like to be let out, or I'd like to hear from a lawyer now. So you guys are going to start accusing me of doing something.
Well, I mean, I kind of accused you all along. I'm trying to tell you what I know and what I found out.
Yeah.
And if you want an attorney, all you have to say is, I want an attorney. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, this is all voluntarily. I don't know why I can't be let out right now. I want to leave. I would like to leave right now.
I'm told that you're not leaving.
Why?
Because there's enough, I believe there's enough information to place you at the scene of the crime, and that you're someone that's caused this to happen.
Alright.
Okay?
Okay.
Are you asking for an attorney? You're asking to leave, or are you?
I'm asking to leave because I think this is bullshit. I came down here voluntarily.
Yes.
To voluntarily talk to you guys. Now you guys are telling me that I can't leave, and I didn't do anything. I want to be let out.
Okay.
And I want to smoke a cigarette.
Okay.
Frustrated, the detectives must end the interrogation. It's possible that Stephen refuses to believe his friend has betrayed him, but, as we will later hear from Billy, he was ready to come clean. In the meantime, there are still a few things that Christopher's interrogators would like to cover.
And right now, I'm going to tell you that there are some other stories that are being told. You got to think long and hard right now about what happened this weekend.
Okay.
Okay? Let's go back to Saturday night.
Alright.
What happened after you left your girlfriend's the party that you went to?
I was pretty sure I went back home, but
Okay.
I may have gone out with Steve.
The confrontation phase of the interrogation is now underway, but Christopher maintains his original story, although the detectives aren't buying it.
What do you know about what happened up there in Mount Vernon?
All I know is like this morning, like really early this morning, we were looking on the internet, on the Telegraph to see what was going on, and there was something about, there was a lady killed in Mount Vernon, and there's like a young girl that's in stable condition in the hospital. I don't know if it was me or one of Steve's friends or something. Somebody texted one of us or emailed us. I just remember that we heard that the girl was conceivably in the same class as one of our friend's sisters or something. And so I guess she's about 10 years old, which honestly, I hope she's going to be okay, because that's horrible to do something to a little girl. But
It's common in the Reid technique for investigators to ask what the suspect thinks the purpose of the interview is. Individuals who are being honest are more likely to use realistic words to describe the crime, while deceptive individuals may answer vaguely or use soft words like hurt or attack instead of murder. Christopher's use of the word killed here is in line with what a truthful subject might say. However, his reference to the girl in the hospital is vague. This may be an example of how most people who are being deceptive won't answer every question in a deceptive way. People will generally provide a mix of deceptive and truthful behaviors, but there will be more deceptive indicators when someone is lying and more truthful indicators when someone's being honest. This is why it's important for detectives to interpret body language and verbal responses in conjunction with the actual physical evidence.
I mean, I know it sounds cold, but it wasn't a huge deal to me because I didn't know them.
Although Christopher has not been formally diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, it's always interesting when people such as psychopaths use language like this, because it shows their awareness of what empathy, or lack of, is, but also their ability to be manipulative.
Assuming that somebody specifically tried to kill them, like, that rubs against my conscience personally. I'm one of those type of gentlemanly chivalry sort of guys that you don't even hit girls, let alone go out and treat them badly.
Christopher's statement here may be what is known as a convincing statement. Individuals who are telling the truth don't usually feel the need to prop up their story with convincing statements about what a great person they are, because they know the facts are on their side. On the other hand, individuals who are being deceptive may use these sorts of statements to bolster their image and persuade detectives to believe them.
If the girl's in the hospital, obviously she probably got injured or something.
Well, Chris, it's funny you should mention that, because I want to let you know she is going to survive, fortunately.
That's good.
Yeah, that is real good, because it's real good because she deserves to be alive, and so does
so does the lady, I'm sure.
You know, but you know what else is good? It's good because she can ID the two people that
That'd be
were
good.
in the house.
That'd be awesome. I hope you guys can do that.
Yeah.
Christopher's voice is slightly shakier, and he overall sounds less sure of himself here as the detectives attempt to break his confidence. And although Christopher states his relief that Jamie is expected to survive, he's likely panicking at the thought that she may be able to identify him.
Let's say it was a robbery gone wrong. Mom ends up dead. The little girl ends up seriously injured. People involved in it.
They're pretty
Captured.
nasty people.
What do you think should happen to those people?
Well, they should probably get sent to jail for the rest of their lives, or prison. I honestly don't know what's the difference between jail and prison.
Although Christopher's response sounds okay at first glance, it's a red flag that he qualified his answer with the word probably. Most truthful individuals would provide a firm response in a situation like this. If the officers had doubt about his involvement before, then they definitely don't any longer.
The thing that seems to have led you to me is the car.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know, maybe a car like that was just seen in the area, and so you're checking out that lead. It's quite possible I was in the area. I could have been driving down that road right when it happened, which kind of scares me. Because what if they'd come out of the house and needed a getaway car and killed me for my car? That kind of makes me nervous. I probably won't drive around there too much anymore.
This statement indicates that not only does he know the exact area the police are referring to, but he won't go there again. This may have been a slip-up on his part, as Christopher was likely trying to convince the detectives that not only was he not involved in the crime, but he could have even potentially been the killer's next victim. However, in doing so, he seemingly confirmed that he had been in that area. In addition, asking the suspect to elaborate on their knowledge of the evidence is a common way to get them talking, and a possible opening for them to make mistakes.
Let's say you were on that road that night.
Assuming I was, that scares me shitless.
It should.
Because not only does it make me a suspect, obviously, since you're questioning me, but that really scares me that somebody who was willing to attack, even if they were just trying to get out of the house, a woman and a little girl, of course they're going to attack me for my car. Like, I've never had my car jacked, but I've been scared of it sometimes.
Apparently, while driving around on Saturday night, Christopher and Stephen traveled all the way to Mount Vernon. Christopher states that they eventually parked in a driveway down one of the back roads for a bathroom break, but he doesn't clearly remember where they were. Unsurprisingly, the detectives find this to be more than suspicious, but rather than confront Christopher just yet, they switch gears to a new topic: the gang. Stephen had recently formed the Disciples of Destruction, looking to achieve a sense of brotherhood along with financial prosperity. He recruited none other than Christopher, Billy, and Quinn, where the essential values of the group consisted of loyalty and violence, with the only way in being the commission of crime. The recruit would invade a house and dispose of anyone who may be inside. Seeing as Christopher was having trouble at home, he wanted more than anything to be part of something where he could freely express himself. Christopher had been accusing his mother of emotional and physical abuse for quite some time, claiming that she would allegedly pin him to the floor and pop acne on his back, spank him, and require him to carry a vacuum around the house. The accusations were never confirmed, but his mother did recall a time where she had spanked the child so hard with a wooden spoon that the utensil broke. She would later admit that she regretted losing her control, but has since denied any of the other allegations, and there is no evidence of them being true. Nonetheless, during his early teenage years, Christopher began to have dark and twisted fantasies about his mother, and wished that one day he would carry them out. Confessing his evil thoughts to a counselor at cadet camp, he supposedly stated his thoughts of wanting to cut his mother into pieces and listen to her scream like I screamed. The counselor, horrified at what they'd heard, immediately notified Christopher's parents.